Hi everyone! In this video, we'll discuss 6 reasons why decluttering will both elevate your life and simplify it at the same time. Welcome here, my name is Reina, and on my channel we talk about all things that pertain to retirement. Decluttering your things is a very sensitive topic, and the reason for that is because all of us, each and every one of us, have a different relationship with things. Those relationships begin in our childhood and we carry them through all the way to adulthood. The things that happen in our past have an impact on how we feel about our things and how we deal with them. To give you a life example, my family, my sister, my mom and dad, and myself escaped from what was then known as Czechoslovakia back in 1969. Russia and 3 other Warsaw Pact countries occupied Czechoslovakia August 20th, and many people escaped. My parents escaped in 1969, by which time the borders had already been closed for most of a year. When we left, my parents walked out of their apartment, which they owned. They closed the door and left everything behind, knowing that literally that same week, all of these things would be seized by the government and they would never see them again. We left Czechoslovakia and started our life all over again. I think when you lose all of your things, be it to these types of situations or fires or weather events like the weather that is happening in Florida right now, these things have an impact on how we relate to the things that we have. In the case of my dad, as an example, my dad had trauma from his early childhood as well. And I think the trauma of trying to get his family to leave an occupied country safely and losing all of his things, which he was attached to, had an impact on him. He had what we think was a very low-level hoarding disorder. I can remember how his piles of magazines and papers and pens and pencils and various objects were the only thing that really caused disharmony in our home. As a result, I think that my relationship with things is the opposite, in that I don't like having a lot of things around me. Don't get me wrong, I am not a minimalist. I've said this before. I like things. I like having pretty things. I'm like most people. I have things in my cupboards. I just don't like to keep things that are out in the open unless it's something that I really enjoy or I use all the time. As such, my kitchen is pretty bare when it comes to what's out on my countertops, but I do have things hanging on walls or flowers that bring me joy. So whenever we broach the topic of decluttering, it's really easy to say to people, well, just get rid of your stuff. But for a lot of people, that may be difficult. For some people, it's easy. People like me, I relish getting rid of my stuff. The people at the local Goodwill know me by my first name. But for others, it's difficult. Decluttering is a muscle. It has to be used and exercised in order to get better at it. One of the best ways that I know of doing this is a game that was invented by 2 fellows called the Minimalists. They have a podcast and I think a YouTube channel. And their game involved a month-long process where the first day you get rid of 1 thing, and day number 2 you get rid of 2 things, day number 3, 3 things, and so on. I decided to play this game for you guys because even though I don't have a huge amount of things, I still have things, and I want to show you that even someone who doesn't have a lot of things still can get rid of 490 some objects and doodads and tchotchkes quite easily during the course of a month. 491 items over 30 days. This is how much I was able to gather up and get rid of from my home. The thing I like about this game is it starts you off slowly. It kind of builds your muscles like you do in the gym. First it's the one thing, then it's the two, then it's the three. By the time you get to mid-month, you are seriously going through your things if you want to finish the game. And decluttering is becoming a habit. And so this is my favorite way to declutter. And once a year, for sure, I do this. Because over the course of a year, even people that don't really like a lot of stuff can certainly accumulate a lot of stuff. I think it's important to also understand why people may have a difficult time with decluttering. One reason could be that they are emotionally attached to an object. In other words, someone gave it to them, or it makes them think of a certain time, of a certain place. Their children made it, or their grandchildren made it. Objects have sentimental value, and people have a very difficult time letting go of these types of things. What I would say is you don't need to let go of all of these things, but in some cases, if you can take a picture and keep a picture, that might be an option. Or these are things that perhaps at some point later down the line, you might be more willing to let go. Another reason could be that they're worried that they might regret giving that item away because they may need it at some point. I can't tell you how many things I have purged from my life that I thought I was going to need at some point, or that I've had for even several years and maybe used once or twice. I would say that if that's the case, if there's an item and you think you might need it, it's something that you can potentially borrow from someone else. And instead of having these things cluttering up your space and your shelves and headspace, I think that it's worthwhile to purge that item and borrow it when you need it. Another reason for people not decluttering is the overwhelm. You know, they have so many things. Your garage is full, your basement is full, you have a storage locker. There's just so many things in your life that you don't even know when to start. And that's where, again, this minimalism game, it has this soft start and it gets you going. Definitely give it a try, because I think everyone has enough things in their life that they can at least play the game for a week. Strangely, some people don't declutter because they're perfectionists. So they want to do the whole declutter thing perfectly. They've read the book about decluttering, the magic of tidying up, or whatever that book is that was kind of making the rounds, and they want to do it, you know, object by object, section by section, you know, room by room, whatever the pattern is. And they're so legalistic about it that they never ever get started. And I think it's worthwhile just to go ahead and get rid of that one thing and just start. It doesn't matter where you start. It's what they tell you about YouTube. They're always like, don't worry about that first video. No one's going to watch it. Just get it out there. Get it out there, post it, get started. So this is the same kind of advice. Don't wait to be perfect, just get started. And then, like I've mentioned, there's the whole concept of getting rid of things that you've paid a lot of money for. And again, you know, what I would say to that is you may have paid money for it, but it's sitting there. doing nothing, accumulating dust, taking up space, and someone else can actually use that item or might get joy out of that item. So I would urge you not to feel guilt in parting with something and letting it go from your life, because someone else may want it and it will get used. Things that sit on a shelf and provide no value or purpose to someone, in my view, are not meaningful in any way. The first reason to think about decluttering some of your things is that having a lot of things around you, especially things that don't necessarily bring you joy, increases our anxiety and stress. By reducing the number of things that you have around you, you will help to ease some of that stress from your life. There's also stress that just comes with visual clutter. When there's a lot of things around you, you can become agitated. You get anxious because there's so many things and you know you need to get rid of some things, but you just don't know how to start. Your decision making is affected, so you get anxious about that. There's decision fatigue. By decluttering, you create a calmer and a more organized environment, which eases some of this busy mind that is happening, which contributes to stress and contributes in some cases to anxiety. The second reason is that minimizing the number of objects improves your focus and brings more clarity. A cleaner and a more organized space helps to reduce distractions. It allows you to think a little bit more clearly because there isn't as much stuff that's kind of getting in the way. You can concentrate a little bit better, and this certainly helps in your productivity. I think it also allows you to enjoy the things you are doing a little bit more. So as an example, if you're a knitter, you can focus more on your knitting and the project that you're working on, rather than on all of the stuff that is surrounding you and perhaps preventing you from being able to put your project down and see what's going on in a clear way. Number 3, I think that decluttering boosts mental health. I don't know about you, but I know when my dad had all this stuff, he kind of felt guilty about it. He knew this was not a good thing for him and that it caused stress to family members. And so he did feel guilty about that, though he did not voice that on any regular basis. I think when our homes are overwrought with things or they're very messy, we feel like we're somehow failing. Now, this is not the case. I mean, there's people who are maximalists and they get a lot of pleasure out of their things. Often those things are arranged or there's a certain harmony to them, even though there is a lot of them. And I'm not telling you to get rid of things that you enjoy. What I'm saying is, if these things around you are causing you some mental distress, then perhaps it behooves you to consider at least diminishing some of these objects from your view and from your life. Number 4, create space for the things that matter. So here's my point about the fact that you don't have to get rid of everything. You do not have to have bare spaces. You can have things around you that bring you immeasurable joy, make you happy, that remind you of wonderful events in your life. But the trick is to allow those things to actually breathe, to have space so that you can see them. Sometimes we have so much clutter that we can't see the things we love and we forget we have them. And the process of decluttering actually allows us to touch our things, see our things, and say, oh wow, I forgot I had this. I remember when. Having less clutter definitely helps to improve our life in a physical sense. Our home is cleaner and it's easier to clean, and we feel less intimidated about cleaning it. Again, sometimes when we have a lot of things on the counter or a lot of things on the floor, I think it's difficult to know, where do I begin? Where do I start to clean all this stuff up? It's daunting, and it becomes harder and harder, and then things accumulate and it becomes even harder after that. So physically, it's better for us to have a clean space where you have more fresh air flowing through, where you aren't tripping over things, and you can actually use the area and the space that you have in your home safely. When you get older, falling, I think, becomes a huge issue. And when there's objects and things laying around on the floor, the risk of falling becomes greater. Finally, decluttering can foster mindfulness. The process of going through your things, as I said before, makes you think about where you got them, why you got them, sometimes how much money you spent on them. And this is a huge issue that prevents a lot of people from decluttering things, is that they go through stuff and they're like, oh my goodness, I have spent so much money buying this. I can't possibly just give it away or get rid of it. But the fact is, if you're not using these things, perhaps it is better for someone else to be able to have them and use them, and for you just to have more space in your home to enjoy the things that are left there. I want to add that when you're decluttering, you do not need to just go whole hog and do, 31 days and do the full, meal deal. Why not try a week? Try removing one item, then 2 items, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over the course of a week, and see how you feel about it. I think decluttering's a little bit like losing weight. When you lose weight and those pounds come off at the beginning, and it does make you excited and you're more motivated to actually lose what you need to lose, even though it's hard. Well, it's the same with decluttering. I think that once you kind of get going, it becomes easier and you get more excited as things begin to leave your space, and the space that you have and that you live in becomes more open to you to use in a different way, in a new kind of way. I would also add that it is very stressful for our children or whoever has to clear up our things once we're no longer here. My sister and I had to deal with our parents' things, and I've mentioned in a previous video how onerous that was. We had to hire a company to actually help us deal with it because there was so much stuff. It cost us approximately close to $5,000 to get someone to help us to declutter, get rid of, clean out my parents' house. It's expensive to dispose of old things if they have to go to the landfill. We didn't have, unfortunately, the luxury of time to spend selling things and so on. The company we hired did some of that, but once it was in their possession, they were the ones dealing with it, and they were the ones that were actually getting the funds to dispose of these items because it takes time and effort. It's not something that I want my children to have to deal with. And so I think the whole concept of Swedish death cleaning, as morbid as that term sounds, is the idea that you go through your things, you give away what you can to people that you know who want those things and who can use those things. You donate what you can, because charity groups will receive benefit out of selling those items, or they will pass them on to someone who really needs them. and you recycle what you can. And finally, at the very end is the stuff no one wants, you'll have to take to the landfill. But I suggest that when you retire, you are entering a new phase of your life. And it's kind of nice to have a clean slate. And you also have the time, once you're in retirement, to deal with your things. So I would say don't feel overwhelmed. Take it one item at a time and start the journey with one thing, and then two, and then three, and then four. I think you'll find a lot of benefit. At the same token, don't remove things out of your life that give you joy and that you love. Don't feel guilty about having those things around you. There may come a time where you no longer desire those items and you'll be more ready to let them go. But start with decluttering the things that just take up valuable space, both physically and mentally. If this kind of information is of benefit to you and you've enjoyed what you've seen on this video, I would be so happy if you subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up if you enjoy the material. I typically post videos every Tuesday, and so this is it for this week. I'll see you next time.